Hello, everybody. We've got Craig and Mark here. A special edition. We're trying a format out here. Mark is in Texas right now. You're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right?
Yeah, yep. I'm right next to Frisco. Actually, the pedal back behind me, it'll say Little Elm, which is where we're actually at. I'm on the border. I'm a city block away from Frisco, Texas. So, yeah.
Okay. And of course, I'm in New Mexico. I'm in Farmington, in the Four Corners region of the southwestern U.S. And I used to live over there by you, Mark. And Mark and I have done several backpacking trips together.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk about some differences tonight versus our current situation and rehash some adventures or misadventures in the past. Mark's been on the podcast before as audio, but this is the first time for him to be on video. So I'm going to give Mark a minute or so to talk about himself and then we'll carry on.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Wilcox, but I'm so used to doing webcasts for my day job. You can find me over on my website at campingforge.com. So, back over to you, Craig.
And of course, if you're watching this, you're probably watching this on YouTube for the full length. I'm going to also have this available on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all that, and maybe even a Substack or something. Who knows? Of course, I'm from even further east than you are, Mark. I'm from East Texas, and where it rains a lot. But now that I'm in Farmington, where it rains like I think they said the average here is 8.9 inches. So definitely some concerns for changing strategies versus being in North Texas or East
Yep.
Texas or the more populated regions of Texas. What do you have to say about that?
It is important to talk about the weather, regardless if you're going any kind of outdoors. I just been on back-to-back car camping trips in the central Texas area, so basically the area between Waco and Dallas. And to your point about rain, it feels like it's rained 8 inches just this month of May. It's rained, but almost every day because May is the wettest month in Texas. As a result, like I actually booked shelter sites because I didn't want to deal with wet tents. And so, yeah, to your point, also would say when you're going to go on any kind of backpacking or hiking trip. Now, I know most of you are thinking backpacking. You're thinking more closer to like where near where Craig lives now, up in the mountains and that. But you can hike around and backpack or go in the wilderness anywhere, and rain can really impact you from multiple ways. I'll use this as just touch point quick because maybe we're going to talk about it here in a minute, which is my trip from a couple years ago where when Craig and I have been on a trip, we were actually on a backpacking trip where it was just like raining a lot, and the trail we were on
Yeah.
was what should be a simple trail turned into a difficult trail because of so much mud. In fact, I was talking with Craig last night, and I went there last year with another buddy, and the trail, because a part of the trail, it has a hill that's about, I don't know, 500 feet straight up, and in dry conditions, it's just strenuous, and you just have to worry more about dehydration getting up the hill.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
Meanwhile, a couple years ago, I was actually in Royale, in which should be a simple trail, but it was raining so much, the rocks were covered, were just wet. I fell 3 or 4 times. I've twisted ankles. I came a couple times very close to hitting my head on some very large rocks, where I started thinking like, I volunteered to come here. I paid money to come. I flew half across the world. It felt like because, like I said, going from
Right.
North Texas to Isle Royale, which is just off the coast of Canada. It's technically an American territory. It's an island, but you're a lot closer to Canada than you are the United States. And I was going in
Right.
June, thinking it was going to be dry and cooler than Texas. It was actually warmer in Isle Royale that week than it was in Dallas that week, especially with the humidity.
Yeah. It's not a big concern here like that as far as rain, but of course, the things you have to consider a lot of the roads out here, when you get off of the paved road, so to speak, you're on BLM land where there's a
Yeah,
lot of oil leases. You're accessing some of these hiking areas like Chaco Canyon and other places like that around here, and even up in Colorado, you're accessing a lot of these dirt, sandy, whatever roads. And if it rains, even with a four-wheel drive high clearance vehicle, you're not going to get through. You're going to get stuck.
or what about?
And
Do you have to worry about flash floods where you're at too, or?
oh yeah, definitely flash floods. You have all these areas. back where I'm from and back where we have done backpacking around the Dallas area, above and below, you have all these little creeks. And the difference
Yeah.
is they are a creek because they have water in them.
Sure.
But out here you have washes,
Yeah.
which at some point in the year there might be some water in there, but there may not. And then
Yeah.
it may be during that monsoon time, which usually for this part of the world is late summer into early fall
Yeah.
sometimes. You have a huge amount of water. So you have to be a little cautious about your accessible routes
Yep.
and how they can turn around real quickly, just from an access standpoint of actually getting to the spot.
Yep.
It's a little different than Isle Royale, where you have to actually get up there, get on a boat, and then
Yeah.
tackle that boat across the water, and then you're like stuck over there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So a little bit different strategy. And with that in mind, it's super dry out here. As I said, the rainfall, 9 inches a year. Any backpacking or day hiking trip or camping trip, you're probably going to have to be carrying in a lot of your water that you're using because you're not going to be able to get it. Kind of in similar terrain down in like Big Bend and
Yeah.
stuff, and I have as well, which is pretty similar to New Mexico in a
Yep.
lot of ways. But you're having to carry liters and liters of water sometimes, and that can be detrimental to your trip plans when you got to hump so much water in.
I would say the ultralight people. I remember when I was talking about planning my Big Bend trip, who claimed to be an ultralighter, and they were like, I said, yeah, I have to carry 8 liters of water, and they were like, why are you carrying so much water? Just get your water on the trail. I'm like, there's no water. Officially, there's no water in Big Bend. There's
Right.
and no, there are. It's like you're talking about. There are some places during the backpacking season, the guides keep in touch with each other. The backpackers can say, here's where water can be found. But I know, for example, my guide service that I use, I think they've actually moved away from doing the full backpacking trips to Big Bend because of the water situation. That it's just they moved it to day hiking. So you,
Oh yeah.
because the campsites there will have potable water. At
Yeah.
least you can get it from one of the local convenience stores. But yeah, the desert, you can't. You watch these camping videos and they're like, oh look, I just go down and they'll complain about maybe the difficulty of getting water and having to filter it. But I'm like, at least you have water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change from some of the stuff that I've done because I've been backpacking in Arkansas and
Yeah.
Oklahoma and Louisiana where it's still green and you still have water.
Yeah.
Even when we were doing that trail,
Oh,
what is it
oh,
called?
cross
The
timbers.
cross timbers.
Yep.
And I'm filtering water out of the Red River,
Yeah.
and the water is obviously it's reddish brown,
Yeah. It's the
but
name.
I'm able to filter it out. It doesn't necessarily taste the best, but it's filtered and it's clean.
Yep.
Things that could harm me.
Yep.
Some places out here, you may be miles and miles away from a
Yep.
water source.
Yeah. I remember talking to a guy at REI and he told me he had to filter water out of basically a depression that had some water in it, and then sitting in the middle of it was a cow patty. And he said the filter took care of the bad stuff in the water, but it still smelled of cow patty. That's when
Yeah.
you know, that's when you know you hard up for water when you're,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
again, kids, don't follow the instructions of whatever filtration system. That was an emergency, but you don't want to find yourself in that predicament.
I think versus central eastern U.S.
Yeah,
versus out here in the
yeah,
Southwest, especially, you're going to have to take water into consideration in a multitude of ways.
yeah,
And that's going to change your strategy quite a bit.
yeah,
So speaking of your
yeah.
like a summary of your Isle Royale trip,
Yeah.
what was the plan of your Isle Royale trip
Yeah,
and
so the hour, yeah,
what
so
went bad?
yeah, so it was. I went on a group trip. It was a guided trip, but it was supposed to be a day, 6 night trip through Royale Royale, which again is an island. It's a 3 hour boat ride from Minnesota to the island. It's the least visited United National Park in the continental United States. That
Oh wow.
also apparently has a distinction of being the most revisited national park in the United States. And you're like,
Okay.
I want to go back. And it's very pretty. It's known for the fact there's a couple things also unique about it is that while it is in the northern part, you expect to find bears. There's no bears on the island, and there's no raccoons.
Huh.
So, but there's plenty of moose. There's some wolves. Anyway, so it's a relatively flat terrain too. So I wasn't expecting that much of an adventure. But it was June, and I was there in June. A heat wave came in. It
Yeah.
was 90 something degrees, almost like a monsoon season. Turned into a swamp. The mosquitoes were
Right.
so thick. As soon as you hit the trail, the mosquitoes didn't leave you 24/7. And by like day 3, We had a severe thunderstorm come through, destroyed all my gear, my tent gone, all
Yeah.
backpack, everything soaked, everything. So we decided to bail. Like we talked back to base camp back on the mainland, and they had already booked. They called and got me a ride on the ferry if I could get to,
Hmm.
but I had to get to a fishing camp that day to make the ferry ride the next day. So 10
Oh, wow.
mile 10-mile forced march hike through an unmarked to a trail basically hadn't been on by who knows how long. Anyway, got on the boat the next day, took a 3 hour boat ride. Of course, the way this went, my phone by now is about almost dead. And I intended to say, I'm going to get on the boat and let's do a podcast. I'm just going to relax. And then when I get back on mainland, I'll figure out how to get to a hotel and everything. And anyway, phone's almost dead. My charger was completely soaked, so I couldn't even recharge my phone. And got on mainland now, where the dock is. It's a
Hmm.
town of 150 people, so there's not even how much. I still have to get 75 miles to my suitcase and all this other stuff in a motel. So they got the people at the town. They call this guy to pick you up. He says, $100. I'll take you to where you want to go. So pay the $100. Talk about surge pricing.
Yeah, for
He
sure.
drops me off at this motel, and outside the motel, the guy in the room next door to me is this old guy smoking a cigar, and he's got a pit bull. And you're just like, okay, is this situation going to go from bad to worse? And anyway, I go to the front desk, and I ask the girl at the front desk, hey, I need to get a ride to Duluth. That's where my airplane is. And she's like, oh, there's no ferries here, there's no Ubers. But guess what? She's, dude, the only people who are here, they either came from Duluth and going back to Duluth, or they're going from here back to Duluth. There's no other way to go.
Oh, wow.
And I go back. I end up I gone back to 7-Eleven, got some chips and sodas, came back to my room, and the guy outside with the pit bull, he goes, "Hey, I work the weekends at this motel, but during the week, in exchange for working the weekends, they let me stay in their hotel for free. If
Hmm.
you need a ride somewhere, let me know." And I'm like, dude, I need a ride to Duluth. And he says, pay for the gas, I'll take you. So we get in the car.
Hmm.
The dog is the friendliest dog I've ever met, and he drops me off. And to me, the miracle of all this is just the kindness of people here. But in terms of the backpacking stuff, and really, the fact is that it doesn't matter how well you're prepared and how much experience you have, stuff can
Yeah.
just go bad. I had my gear. I had a tent that'd been through many rainstorms before. We got 8 inches of rain and 70-mile-per-hour winds on an
Yeah.
island, and it just flooded out. I have friends who say it doesn't matter how waterproof your tent is, eventually it's going to fail. I don't believe that. I think modern tents, particularly if you got the Dynemas and stuff, these things are it. If they're flooding out, you're probably Noah's Ark has returned. I think it's
Right.
it's part of it too was because when the tent was starting to fail, like you haven't slept properly in a couple of days. I definitely had too much stuff open in my backpack. In hindsight, because the thing is, I did actually have an emergency bivy, which is what I used to sleep overnight before waiting for the ferry. In hindsight, what I
Hmm.
should have done is thrown everything once it was raining that bad, and I realized water was like flooding the bottom of the tent before it
Yeah.
completely became a swimming pool. I should have just taken my sleeping bag because it wasn't that cold. I should have just taken everything, shoved it back in the dry sack, wrapped that all up, and just got in the bivy and just waited it out, and I would have been fine.
Yeah.
But the thing was, things got wet, sleeping bag soaked, the tent's a disaster. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
steak. I was going to have to bushcraft something out of it to try and make things work the next day. And I could have done it, but I was just like, okay, I could have died last night. I didn't. I'm done. I want to go home. So it's time to
Right.
bail. The island will be here. And I would definitely go back to Royale. I'm not so sure I want to backpack it again, but because I'm like, I'm not sure I'm open to. If I was 25 and not 53, I'd be more open to go back to it. But at this point, I said, you know what? Unless it's an easy trip, a truly easy trip, like maybe for a couple nights, like I'm not so open for wanting to do the week longs anymore. More the like, hey, let's go and we'll hike for a little bit. Not so much inclines, declines. I don't need to do a lot of adventure scrambling anymore.
Right.
And just enjoy camping and hiking and hanging out. But you young kids out there, get out there and get to it. Take,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
It definitely takes a toll on us as we get older. I just turned 51 and I was in Joshua Tree on my
Yeah,
birthday. And of course, another desert environment. And
yeah,
the good thing about it, as I was there in early April, so it wasn't really hot yet.
yeah.
But one of the biggest things I would say about being out here, they call us a desert, I guess, because of
Lack of precipitation.
our here in the high desert on the Colorado Plateau in Farmington. One of the biggest things here compared to where you are is we don't have shade.
Yeah,
Like we have some little trees,
yeah,
like little pinyon
yeah,
pines and
yeah,
junipers here
yeah,
and there. But sometimes you're just
yeah,
out in the middle of a field of sagebrush and there's
yeah.
nothing.
Oh God, it's the worst.
Yeah. So you really have to prepare with sun protection gear, cover yourself up with sun
Well, at
hoodies
least,
and wide
yeah, but
your wide brimmed hats and good stuff.
yeah. I would say, people, for example, one of the most underrated pieces of gear to bring is those survival ponchos. They've got the mylar on the inside, like a space
Uh-huh.
blanket or survival blanket.
Okay.
But the thing is, I'm bringing it up here is that because during, if you were suddenly to find yourself in a rainstorm or something and you got cold, you could put it over you. But also in a mylar, is make sure it's actually true mylar. Mylar
Hmm.
reflects, you can flip it inside out in a heated environment and it will reduce your temperature. See what
Okay.
it was invented to reflect the sun on spaceships.
Oh,
It,
okay.
it
Yeah.
what it does is it reflects 95% of incoming infrared. So if you were to make a flip it on the outside, it will lower temperatures. I'll be conservative, somewhere between 2 to 10 degrees. Really depends on thickness and that,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
that's important. And
Sure.
also, it's another reason too to keep a tarp or poncho or something like a tarp with you, lightweight tarps for backpacking. I used one on one of our trips to the Dinosaur Valley, where you can use it to make shade. You can tie a trach and pole to it, and or tie it to a
Oh, yeah.
yeah, a little brush or something. And you can make shade because heat of the day, you gotta. I said yeah, because beginners will go out there. People who are not from the area, they'll just
Yeah.
underestimate it.
Oh, for sure.
Because people in the Big Ben groups and subreddits, people are asking, "Oh, I want to go out there right now." And we're all like, "No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. It's the heat.
Yeah. July is the wrong time, buddy.
It looks beautiful on the photos because you're sitting in air conditioning. If you go out there, and people don't, another thing too is people don't realize how remote your places like this are.
Yeah.
Grasp when you're in Big Ben and you're at, I think at one of the junctions that we're going to north, you're going north to go to Marathon. It says next gas station is 56 miles,
Hmm.
and because I remember I was driving my friends back, and I remember telling them, I said, because we didn't have GPS yet. I said, I'm going to turn the corner and I'm going to see what the mileage marker says until the next town and see if I need to turn around and go get gas before we hit the road. Because I was driving my pickup truck. Nowadays, I have a Hyundai Santa Fe hybrid, so I'm like, I feel like I can go 600 miles. Like,
Sure.
and if I go slow enough, the electric kicks in, and then I can really extend it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it, anyway,
The average person may not be able to do that.
so, and the other thing again, you have to think about, you have to take this seriously. In the 5 years, like you and I have known each other, I've never heard of anybody. We have not lost anybody in Big Bend to a wildlife encounter. There's including bears. There's javelinas, there's mountain lions, there's
Yeah.
rattlesnakes, there's
Yeah.
bears, there's scorpions. Everything you
Right.
could think of that could bite, sting you, you do not want to encounter in daylight or at nighttime is out there.
Right. Right.
And yet people don't, they leave you alone. But every year we'll lose a couple of people to heat exhaustion, and it's just tragic. And it's always people who they weren't even trying to do anything outrageous. They're going to go for a
Right.
day hike, and
Right.
they didn't go out there with the water, and they didn't realize they were in elevation. Heck, I was nearly one of those victims. To think about, I was almost one of those statistics last year. We went out there. I was out there with a friend who we only were there going to be there for a day. So you're trying to get in as
Yeah.
much. So I went on one trail, my favorite trail out there, the elephant ears or the Batman ears. And
Uh-huh.
I love about it is no one's there. It's actually mostly flat up until you get to this great lookout point. And so I know I can hike it, and I was hiking it fast, but you're at 8,000 feet. So I'm kind of like going, my buddy's like suffering behind me. I'm not paying attention. And then said, why don't we drive over to St. Helena's Canyon, which is like the easiest freaking hike.
Right.
When we drive over there, we drive over the canyon. It's Big Bend is still 40 miles away. We drive over there. We start hiking up this canyon. And the first half, it's only a 1 mile hike, but the first half mile is in concrete. They have a nice concrete pathway. But anyway, I ran out of water. I drank all my water, and I'm like, oh man. And then I'm like, started getting lightheaded and stuff. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta turn back. I can't, like, I'm not,
Yeah.
because the thing is, at St. Lee, the only difficult part is actually getting up and down, getting on and off the trail. There's a very steep
Hmm.
part over onto the Rio Grande. I don't know what's going to happen. Me trying to get me back off that.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the point. That's what happens. You go out there and you think, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be fine. And it's like the combination of heat, dehydration, because it's dry air, and overexertion. And
Yeah.
suddenly you can find yourself, and again, if something happens out in Big Bend, as I said, because we were on one of the highways driving out there, it's the place where it has, but the speed limit says 85 miles per hour. And
Yeah.
and my friend goes, man, look at that. The speed limit's 85. I said, yeah, that's the maximum speed limit because that's the maximum speed limit we can have. And because there's no highway patrol out there. But I said, on the other hand, that's also the sign that says if something happens to you, good luck. You're on your own. It's Mad Max out here.
Yeah.
Like, welcome. If you wanted to be a prepper, guess what? Have a car trouble on the
Oh, for
road to Big
sure.
Bend or the road to Farmington.
It's like the classic,
Yeah,
entering the dungeon. It's abandon all hope.
yeah,
You who enter,
yeah,
they're giving them that warning that you may not survive this.
yeah. If you're not prepared,
And the
yeah,
biggest thing is if you get yourself into trouble, there's not going to be anybody really to help you.
yeah. No, that's how
Um,
you're really going to be in a world of hurt.
yeah, I think some of the observations that I see out here, all the parks that I've been
Yeah,
to out this way, whether it be Zion or Petrified Forest
yeah,
or
yeah,
Arches or whatever I've been to, coming from
yeah,
Central and East Texas and North Texas, when you're losing water.
yeah, yeah,
If it's July and you're walking down the sidewalk where you live or back in where my mom lives in East Texas, you're sweating.
yeah,
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 you're realizing how much is coming out of your body.
yeah.
Over here, you're sweating, but you don't realize how much you are sweating, and you're like, "Why is my shirt wet?"
Oh, it goes,
Like I
all
don't.
evaporates.
Yeah, it's all evaporating. It's such
Yeah,
a different. And I see so many people, like you were saying, that are coming out unprepared. They don't take into consideration that there is no water sources in the park. That they're going to be. They live at 400 feet in Dallas,
yeah,
Texas, and yet they're out here in Zion or
yeah.
in Grand Canyon, and it's 5,000 feet elevation,
Yep.
and life is a little bit different.
Yep. You
And I,
don't see a peak, so you don't think you're in elevation. That's what gets everybody.
oh, for sure. And the fact of them having that mindset of just like I'm in the city,
Yeah.
if I dial 911, there's going to be a fire truck and an ambulance and a
Right.
police car going to show up in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like maybe not so much out
Right.
here. So I think you have to think about being more self-sufficient
Yep.
the further that you come in the western part of the
Yep.
U.S. Or if you're not in the U.S., like we're going to look at a video here in a minute. A lot of the audience, you folks out there watching, probably are familiar with
Yep.
what I think you know who
Right.
I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, no, we'll
Anyway,
say it when we bring it up. Yeah, we can go. That's
yeah,
a good
we
segue.
bring.
We'll get that's a good segue. We'll pull it up. Yeah, because she actually talks about an adventure she's had recently. And is it the New Zealand one or?
Yeah, that's what I was going to pull up.
Yeah.
So we'll go to share and we'll play a little bit of that video.
Yeah.
All right, can you see that, Mark?
Yeah. Miranda goes outside. I think her channel's changed a couple names a couple times, so that's no wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, she was with REI for a long time, and then she kind of split off on her own. So
Yep.
if you're not tuned in to Miranda, definitely take a look at her. We're not going to
Yeah.
get into that on
Uh,
this one, but
this one.
let's
Yeah.
take a look.
Yep.
Let's take a look and see what she's got going on here.
We reached the saddle. The rain and the wind are definitely picking up here. Does not look like this weather's gonna clear anytime soon.
This is not the video that I intended to make, but it is one that I feel compelled to share. My final backpacking trip in New Zealand ended time we were hiking. We were talking to each other and trying to make the smartest possible decision for ourselves while still wanting to make the best possible video to share with all of you. Rainer and I are currently up in between a bunch of these tarns, kind of a boggy area. We're struggling a little bit with navigation,
just because this track that we are on today is not a proper trail, it's a route. There's no trail markers, there's barely a footpath. We're just trying to find our way through. And it's about 5 o'clock. It's taken us a lot longer to do this hike than I think I expected, just with all the navigation.
Now, I made the decision to bail on this trip because of weather. Primarily, that was the choice. It was really bad, potentially very dangerous weather. But I also could have made the decision to bail simply because I wasn't feeling it, or because I didn't like the hike, or I wasn't having fun, or I just didn't want to be there. Whatever. Backpacking happens simultaneously with real life. And so all of the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings that we have in our everyday lives, there's no reason to think that those aren't going to come up and happen when you're backpacking.
All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
Yeah, I can't imagine being out there, Mark. That'd be like a dream come true, like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But obviously, they're trying to follow this kind of general direction. It's an unmarked path. I guess it has a general place that people go through, but it's not really a marked path that they go through. The weather is bad. Yeah. Little comic relief there at the end. But what decision point do you have, Mark, when you decide? Obviously, you have the one glaring example from
I have all the reasons to, because we have a mutual friend we've gone with. I tell you, I go camping with him the most, and he's driven my wife to the point now where she's like, look, she takes internal bets on if we're actually going to make our camping trip. We're mostly car camping. It's just kind of still annoying. But the point being is, yeah, I have done all of the evacuations. I have bailed, like, for example, the first time I went out with my buddy, we were going to LBJ grasslands. And it's a place outside of town called Decatur. And I swear Decatur gets the worst weather in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro. Like every time there's going to be a bad storm, it's going to hit Decatur first. And sure enough, we were out, and my buddy and I were out there, and we knew we had the chance of rain. So I went to check to see what the weather was, and there was a storm coming through that was like the size of Rhode Island or something.
Yeah.
It was one of those giant storm fronts coming through. It ended up being a tornado. So we had to pack everything up and scramble 5 miles back to the car and get out of there to race the storm home. So I've done that. I've done ones where, being in Texas, I've done where it suddenly got too hot for us. I've done where it literally was like, because we're doing it for fun. It was supposed to be like 70. It wasn't supposed to get warm on us until like for 48 hours until after we got home.
Yeah.
Warm front came in, or it came in a little sooner, and then we're in a place, like I said, we're in a place without shade. And we could go into our tents and we'd be okay, but then it's like we're backpacking, so we don't have a tent where we could share and just to hang out.
Yeah.
So I came really close to having a medical emergency on a backpacking trip once. This was a few years ago. I developed basically an infected prostate. I never thought I'd ever say that on YouTube. But anyway, if you're a man of a certain age, one way or the other, you're going to have to go see the doctor for this thing because it's built in.
For sure.
Anyway, I started having problems. Thankfully, it was on the last day of the trip, so I was able to.
Yeah.
I did have to. I got off the trail and went straight to the emergency room. And yeah, it was also Super Bowl weekend. Watching the Super Bowl on your phone while in the emergency room is not the most enjoyable way to watch a Super Bowl. I don't know what the most enjoyable way it is to watch one, but I'll say that was one of the least enjoyable ways to watch a Super Bowl.
Right.
The part of it is, I have gone out so many times, but also, on the other hand, positive. Sometimes when you're like, because a couple weeks ago, just in terms of outdoors, we got a rare chance to have nice weather to go camping in early May. And I had to work late on Friday, and I was mad at myself that I got stuck in a meeting that went longer. And so I was like an hour late going to pick up my friend, and we were going down to outside of Waco. And it turned out it's because I was an hour late, I missed the literal tornado that went through the town next to the campsite.
Oh my God.
By the time I showed up at the campsite, I was a little upset. It was dark, and I was happy I missed the rain, but I didn't know it was a tornado because the storm had all passed me by the time I got there. Then,
Oh yeah.
but when I was checking it the next day, when I was checking in at the ranger station, they're like, "Oh yeah, we had the rain, the stuff. It came through. We had tornado stuff." And I'm like, "Wow, okay, man. You talk about luck. You just went the other way because I was late there. I missed a tornado." Yeah, the downside of camping in spring in Texas is that it's going to rain, it's going to thunderstorm, and you're more likely to bail on weather. Going back to Miranda's point, weather is the thing you got to pay the most. I think you have to pay the most attention to because it is also the thing that you just can't. We're not sitting in four-walled, we're not sitting in brick structures, and things can flood, and rivers can flood, and creeks can flood, and lakes and like you said, I mean, it's talking about like where you're at. Even if you don't have to get stuck with a flash flood, you get turned into a mud pit that you don't have a vehicle that can drive through it. It is things you're likely to think about planning a trip because it's just never something you have to think about at home. But what about you?
I just think that you have to take into consideration, like she was saying at the end of the video there, maybe sometimes you're just not feeling it.
Yep.
I was on, let's see, I've done Eagle Rock Loop in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple of times. I think it was the second or third time I was doing it. I don't know. It was just really hot and humid. It wasn't really that hot and humid. It was like September.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like it was July.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it gets probably just as hot, even though people think running to the mountains of Arkansas is going to relieve the heat from Texas or Louisiana or wherever. It does reduce it a little bit, but it's still super humid. It still gets hot. And I can remember just coming around. Luckily, the nice thing about that particular trail is it makes a big loop and there's a bunch of access points where you'll see people from time to time. And feeling queasy, I didn't vomit or anything.
Yeah.
I was feeling nauseous. I think I'd eaten some, I don't know, tuna on a tortilla earlier, which I normally have no problem eating.
Yeah.
I've eaten a bunch of those type of things on the trail. But the combination of it being hot, it was humid, maybe I hadn't been consuming enough water, I don't know.
Yeah.
Even though that trail, you're walking through water.
Yeah.
You're walking around the water. There's always water available. The resource that you need right there available. You have to collect it and put it inside of your body.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to go
and keep that balance going.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's difficult to do. Now, luckily, I was at that point of no return where I was going to be miles and miles before I saw somebody. So I just contacted some people and said, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you folks, but could you take me back to my vehicle?"
All right. Yeah.
Because I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
And so I think I'll leave everybody with tonight is no matter how much you prepare, I think you have to decide when enough is enough.
Yep.
And if that's your breaking point, then you need to figure out some way to get yourself out of there in a safe manner. Try it again, maybe.
The mountain's always going to be there, is like Miranda says in that video.
Yeah, the mountains are going to be there.
Yeah.
That trail that you're hiking, it's going to be there. You'll have other opportunities to get out there and do it. So I would say don't put yourself in danger to try to complete something that you may not be able to do safely. Think about safety. Prepare well for your environment. Even though New Mexico and Texas touch, you can see the differences between how I need to prepare being here in New Mexico now versus how Mark would prepare being in Texas. So keep that in mind. If you have any kind of comments, questions, whatever, please let us know and we'll try to answer those best that we can. Thanks, Mark, for coming on.
Yep, my pleasure.
You got any final words?
No, I'm good. We can wrap.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Anyway, until next time, we'll probably try to do this as a regular meeting on here, meeting of the mind, so to speak.
Yep.
And anyway, thanks so much, folks, for watching. We'll see you later.
Yep.
Be safe out there on the trail. Bye.